Speak less, observe more. The psychology of quiet power. In a world where everyone is trying to be heard, the most powerful people are the ones who speak the least. They don't rush to explain themselves. They don't interrupt to prove a point. They don't react emotionally to every situation. And yet, when they finally speak, people listen. This is not coincidence. This is psychology. Most people believe power comes from talking more, from being louder, from dominating conversations, from always having something to say. But the human mind responds very differently. It does not respect noise. It respects control. And control is revealed not by how much you say, but by how much you withhold. Quiet power is misunderstood. It is not shyness, it is not weakness, it is not passivity. Quiet power is restraint with awareness. It is the ability to observe without reacting, to listen without interrupting, to remain composed while others expose themselves. Because here is a psychological truth most people miss. Every time someone speaks unnecessarily, they give away information. Every time someone reacts emotionally, they reveal leverage. Words are not just communication, they are exposure. And the more you expose, the more predictable you become. Predictability reduces power. This is why people who speak constantly are often taken less seriously, even if they are intelligent. Their thoughts feel scattered, their emotions feel accessible, their presence feels easy. Easy presence is rarely respected. Quiet presence, on the other hand, creates uncertainty, and uncertainty creates attention. When you speak less, people start watching more closely. They study your reactions, they wait for your response, they assign weight to your silence. Silence makes others project meaning, and projection gives you influence without saying a word. This is why emotionally intelligent people rarely reveal everything they think. They observe first, they listen longer, they speak last. Because observation is not passive. Observation is data collection. When you observe, you learn. Who is insecure, who seeks validation, who lies, who overcompensates, who holds real authority. People reveal their psychology when they feel safe to talk, and silence makes them feel safe. This is why the quiet person in the room often knows the most. They are not busy performing, they are processing. They are not reacting, they are reading. They understand something most people don't. The one who talks the most is rarely the one in control. Control belongs to the one who can pause, who can tolerate silence, who can resist the urge to explain, defend, or impress. Quiet power also protects you. When you speak less, you avoid unnecessary conflict, you avoid emotional traps, you avoid revealing intentions too early. You give yourself space to think, and space is where clarity lives. This is why powerful individuals rarely respond immediately. They delay, they observe, they choose their words carefully, not because they are slow, but because they are intentional. Intentional speech carries weight. Reactive speech carries weakness. This video is not about becoming silent, it is about becoming selective, knowing when to speak, knowing when to listen, knowing when silence says more than any explanation ever could. By the end of this video, you will understand why speaking less makes people respect you more, how observation gives you psychological advantage, why silence unsettles manipulators, how quiet power reshapes how others treat you, and why the calmest person often controls the room. This is not a personality change. This is a power shift. From reaction to awareness, from noise to presence, from expression to control. Stay with me, because once you understand the psychology of quiet power, you will never waste your words the same way again. Why talking too much weakens your psychological position. Talking feels powerful. It feels like participation. It feels like intelligence. It feels like presence. But psychology does not measure power by expression. It measures power by control. And excessive talking quietly destroys control. Every time you speak without intention, you reduce your psychological position. Not because your words are wrong, but because unnecessary words signal instability. The human mind interprets constant talking as emotional leakage. It suggests nervousness, insecurity, validation seeking, lack of internal grounding. People may not consciously label it, but they feel it. And people respond to feeling long before they respond to logic. This is why the most talkative person in the room is rarely the most respected. They may be heard, but they are not weighted, because weight comes from restraint. Another uncomfortable truth: talking too much removes mystery. Mystery is not manipulation, it is psychological space. When people don't know exactly what you think, they pay attention. When they know everything, they stop listening. This is why over-explainers are often interrupted. Not because they lack intelligence, but because their words feel predictable. Predictability lowers authority. Authority requires uncertainty with stability. You know what you stand for, but others don't fully know your next move. That gap creates respect. Another mechanism at play is information imbalance. In any interaction, the person who reveals more loses leverage. Not because information is dangerous, but because exposure reduces options. When you talk excessively, you reveal intentions too early. You show emotional reactions. You give others material to use. Silence protects optionality. Optionality is power. People who speak less always have more room to adjust, reframe, or disengage. Those who speak too much trap themselves in their own words. This is why silence feels uncomfortable to insecure people. Silence removes their ability to manage perception through words. They fill silence because they fear interpretation. But interpretation is where influence lives. When you speak less, others interpret you. And interpretation magnifies presence. Another subtle effect of excessive talking is dilution of meaning. When everything is said, nothing stands out. Words lose sharpness. Messages lose impact. This is why short statements are often remembered longer than long explanations. Impact comes from compression. Powerful communicators compress thought. Weak communicators expand emotion. Another truth most people avoid: talking too much often comes from fear of judgment. People speak to justify themselves, explain motives, defend choices, appear agreeable. But justification lowers status. High-status individuals rarely justify, they state. They don't convince, they conclude. This finality is not arrogance, it is internal certainty. And internal certainty is contagious. Another key point: talking too much makes you reactive. You respond to everything. You comment on everything. You engage with everything. Reaction signals lack of filter. Filters signal discernment. Discernment signals intelligence. This is why calm, quiet individuals are often assumed to be more intelligent, even before they speak. Their silence implies selection. Selection implies confidence. Another important realization: you don't lose influence by speaking less, you gain it. Because when you finally speak, your words land. They are not noise, they are signal. People stop multitasking, they stop interrupting, they lean in. Not because you demanded attention, but because your behavior earned it. The most important realization of this part is this: power is not in how much you say. Power is in how much you don't need to say. When you stop filling silence, silence starts working for you. And once silence works for you, your presence alone changes the dynamic. How silence forces others to reveal themselves. Silence is not empty. Silence is pressure. When you stop filling space with words, the human mind becomes uncomfortable, and discomfort triggers revelation. Most people speak not because they have something important to say, but because silence threatens them. Silence removes control over perception. When you are quiet, others don't know what you think. They don't know how you feel. They don't know where they stand. And that uncertainty activates the nervous system. So they start talking. They explain, they justify, they overshare, they correct themselves. Not because you asked, but because silence pulled it out of them. This is one of the most powerful psychological effects of quiet presence. Silence turns conversations into mirrors. People begin revealing insecurities, intentions, contradictions, emotional triggers, all without you asking a single question. This is why interrogators speak very little. This is why therapists pause intentionally. This is why powerful negotiators let silence stretch. Silence creates space, and space invites exposure. Another important mechanism here is self-soothing. When people feel uncertainty, they try to soothe themselves through speech. They talk to reduce anxiety. They explain to regain comfort. They fill gaps to feel safe. This is why people often regret what they said later. They weren't speaking from clarity, they were speaking from discomfort. And you were simply present. Another key truth. People reveal their values when they talk freely. What they emphasize, what they repeat, what they avoid. Silence allows patterns to emerge. When you speak less, you stop interrupting those patterns. You allow people to show you who they are, without interference. This is why quiet observers often have sharper judgment. They are not reacting, they are collecting data. Another subtle effect of silence is status inversion. The person who speaks less often gains higher perceived status. Why? Because humans associate calm with confidence, confidence with competence, competence with authority. When someone talks constantly, it feels like they are trying to control the room. When someone stays quiet, it feels like the room is waiting for them. Waiting is power. Another reason silence works is that it removes emotional hooks. Manipulators rely on reaction. Provocateurs rely on response. Insecure people rely on reassurance. Silence denies all three. Without reaction, manipulation fails. Without response, provocation collapses. Without reassurance, insecurity exposes itself. This is why emotionally immature people often dislike quiet individuals. Not because they are rude, but because silence cannot be controlled. Another important realization. Silence changes who ask questions. When you talk less, others start asking you questions. They seek clarity, they seek feedback, they seek approval. The dynamic flips. Instead of you proving yourself, others begin orienting around you. This shift is subtle, but deeply powerful. Another psychological truth. Silence increases perceived depth. Even simple individuals appear thoughtful when they speak less. Because depth is assumed when information is withheld. This is why mystery and authority often overlap. Not because of deception, but because restraint creates gravity. Another uncomfortable truth. Some people will misinterpret your silence. They may project arrogance, they may project coldness, they may project judgment. But projection is not your responsibility. Projection reveals their internal state, not your intention. Silence does not cause projection, it reveals it. This is why silence is honest. It doesn't argue, it doesn't defend, it doesn't correct perception. It simply exists. And existence without explanation is deeply powerful. The most important realization of this part is this. Silence doesn't make others comfortable. It makes them honest. And honesty is where real power begins. When you let people reveal themselves, you no longer guess, you observe. And observation gives you advantage without confrontation. Why observers gain control while talkers lose it. Control is rarely loud. It does not announce itself. It does not argue. It does not rush. Control reveals itself through positioning. And in any social interaction, positioning is decided by who reacts and who observes. The observer always holds the advantage. Why? Because reaction places you inside the situation, while observation places you above it. When you talk constantly, you are participating emotionally. You are invested. You are exposed. You are committed to outcomes. And commitment without leverage reduces control. Observers, on the other hand, remain uncommitted. They watch, they listen, they wait. And waiting is not passive. Waiting is strategic. Another key psychological difference between observers and talkers is information flow. Control follows information. The person who knows more has more options. Talkers give information. Observers collect it. This imbalance alone shifts power. When you talk too much, you reveal your priorities. You reveal your fears. You reveal your triggers. You reveal your intentions. Once revealed, these can be anticipated. Anticipation removes leverage. Observers stay unpredictable, and unpredictability commands attention. Another mechanism at play is emotional containment. Talkers often leak emotion through words. Tone changes, speed changes, justification appears. Emotion reveals urgency. Urgency signals dependence. Dependence lowers status. Observers contain emotion. Their calm remains consistent. Their tone remains neutral. Their timing remains controlled. This containment signals self-regulation. Self-regulation is deeply respected. Another important realization: people subconsciously follow the emotional lead of the calmest person. When one person is reactive and the other is steady, authority shifts naturally. This is why the calm person in conflict often wins without raising their voice. Not because they dominate, but because they stabilize. Stability attracts alignment, another subtle but powerful effect. Observers control pace. Talkers speed things up. They rush to conclusions. They rush to clarity. They rush to resolution. Observers slow things down, and slowing down forces others to adjust. Pace control is power control. The one who controls pace controls outcomes. This is why negotiators speak less. This is why leaders pause. This is why judges listen more than they speak. They understand that decisions made slowly carry more authority. Another uncomfortable truth: people who talk too much often feel the need to be understood immediately. This urgency comes from insecurity. Observers do not need immediate understanding. They are comfortable being misunderstood temporarily. And this comfort creates long-term influence, because people eventually come toward clarity, not noise. Another psychological advantage of observers is detachment. Detachment does not mean indifference. It means emotional distance. Distance allows perspective. Perspective allows choice. Choice creates power. Talkers collapse distance. They merge emotionally. They entangle themselves. Observers remain slightly apart, and that space gives them control. Another key point: observers decide when to engage. They do not respond to every comment. They do not react to every provocation. They do not correct every misunderstanding. They select. Selection signals value. People assume that if you are selective with words, you are selective with everything. Time, energy, attention, and selectivity elevate status. The most important realization of this part is this: control does not belong to the loudest voice. It belongs to the most self-contained presence. When you observe more than you speak, you move from reaction to strategy. And strategy always outperforms impulse. The emotional intelligence behind speaking less. Emotional intelligence is often misunderstood. Most people think it means being expressive, sharing feelings openly, talking things through immediately. But true emotional intelligence looks very different. It looks like restraint. Emotionally intelligent people do not speak every thought they have. They pause, they process, they choose, because they understand something critical. Not every emotion deserves expression. Expression without regulation creates chaos. Regulation creates power. Speaking less is not suppression, it is management. It is the ability to feel deeply without reacting impulsively. This ability changes how others experience you. When you speak less, your emotions stop leading the conversation. Your presence does. Presence is steadier than emotion, and steadiness creates trust. Another key psychological principle here is emotional containment. Emotionally intelligent people contain emotion before releasing it. They don't dump feelings into conversations. They don't unload frustration. They don't vent without purpose. They wait until emotion becomes clarity. Clarity speaks softly. Confusion speaks loudly. This is why emotionally immature people often speak more. They are trying to process emotion externally. They need reaction, they need reassurance, they need engagement. Emotionally intelligent people process internally first. They don't outsource regulation, and self-regulation is deeply respected. Another important distinction: emotionally intelligent silence is not withdrawal. It is attunement. It means you are listening to others and to yourself. You are reading tone, you are observing behavior, you are noticing incongruence. While others are talking, you are understanding. Understanding creates advantage. Another psychological advantage of speaking less is reduced emotional leakage. When you speak impulsively, your tone betrays you. Frustration slips out, defensiveness appears, urgency leaks. These signals are read immediately, and once read, they can be used. Speaking less protects your internal state. It keeps your emotional data private. Privacy creates safety. Safety creates confidence. Confidence creates influence. Another truth most people avoid: silence gives emotions time to mature. Raw emotions are loud, mature emotions are quiet. When you delay speech, emotion either stabilizes or disappears. Many arguments die when silence is applied early, because silence interrupts escalation. Escalation thrives on reaction. No reaction, no fuel. Another powerful aspect of emotionally intelligent silence is selective vulnerability. Emotionally intelligent people do share feelings, but strategically. They choose when, where, with whom. They do not expose vulnerability to those who cannot handle it. They do not confuse openness with availability, and this selectivity deepens respect. Because vulnerability without discernment feels unstable. Vulnerability with boundaries feels grounded. Another subtle effect, people trust those who don't emotionally overshare. Because oversharing feels unpredictable. When someone speaks calmly, even about difficult things, others feel safe. Safety is a form of power. It allows others to relax. It allows conversations to deepen. It allows influence to grow. Another realization. Speaking less reduces regret. Most regret comes from words said too soon, too emotionally, or too defensively. Silence gives you protection from yourself. It gives you time to decide what is worth saying and what is better left unsaid. This restraint is maturity, and maturity commands respect even from those who don't understand it. The most important realization of this part is this. Emotional intelligence is not about expressing everything you feel. It is about choosing what not to express. When you master this, your words gain weight. And when your words gain weight, your presence gains authority. Why quiet people are often underestimated and why that's power. Quiet people are often misunderstood. They are labeled as passive, shy, unsure, less capable. Not because they lack ability, but because they don't advertise it. In a world that rewards visibility, silence is mistaken for absence. And this misjudgment creates a powerful advantage. Because when people underestimate you, they lower their guard. They speak freely. They reveal plans. They expose weaknesses. They assume superiority. All while you observe. Underestimation is not an insult. It is leverage. People only protect themselves against those they perceive as threats. When they don't see you as one, they become careless. This is why the quiet person in the room often sees everything. They are not competing for attention. They are collecting information. Another important psychological effect of being underestimated is reduced resistance. When people believe you are harmless, they don't resist you. They don't challenge you. They don't block you. They don't preemptively defend. This allows quiet individuals to move strategically. They don't need to push. They don't need to force. They don't need to prove. They advance unnoticed until it is too late to stop them. Another subtle advantage. Expectations are lower. Low expectations create freedom. When expectations are low, mistakes are forgiven. Growth is unnoticed. Progress is underestimated. And this allows quiet people to develop skills without pressure. While others perform, quiet people prepare. While others announce, quiet people refine. And refinement always beats performance in the long run. Another psychological truth: people underestimate silence because they fear it. Silence forces introspection. Noise distracts from it. Those who talk constantly often fear what silence might reveal about themselves. So they project weakness onto quiet people to avoid facing their own discomfort. Projection is not assessment, it is defense. Quiet individuals don't need to correct this. They benefit from it. Another important point: being underestimated protects you from envy. People envy those they see as competitors. Quiet people avoid unnecessary rivalry because they are not perceived as threats. This reduces sabotage. This reduces interference. This reduces unnecessary conflict. And reduced friction allows steady progress. Another advantage of being underestimated is element of surprise. When quiet people act, the impact is greater because action contradicts expectation. And contradiction shocks the nervous system. People think, "I didn't see that coming." Surprise amplifies authority. Authority gained through surprise is stronger than authority claimed through noise. Another critical realization: quiet people don't need validation to move. They are internally referenced. They don't wait for applause. They don't need reassurance. They don't seek approval. This internal grounding is why underestimation doesn't hurt them. They are not measuring themselves through others' perceptions, and self-referenced individuals are difficult to manipulate. Another truth: underestimation filters people. Those who dismiss you reveal their own lack of perception. Those who respect your silence often possess depth. This helps quiet individuals choose allies wisely. They don't attract attention, they attract alignment. And alignment is more powerful than popularity. The most important realization of this part is this: being underestimated is only a weakness. If you need to be seen, if you don't, it becomes an advantage. Quiet power grows best when it is not rushed, not announced, not explained. And when it finally reveals itself, it does not need validation. It speaks for itself. How silence protects you from manipulation and traps. Manipulation feeds on reaction. It needs emotion, it needs urgency, it needs explanation. And silence starves all three. Most psychological traps only work when you respond immediately. Manipulators provoke to create movement. They confuse to force clarification. They pressure to rush decisions. Silence removes momentum. When you don't react, the trap collapses. Because manipulation requires participation. Another critical truth: people test boundaries by watching how quickly you respond. Fast reactions signal accessibility. Accessibility signals leverage. When you pause, you disrupt the test. The manipulator no longer knows which move works. Uncertainty weakens control. Another common manipulation tactic is emotional baiting. Comments designed to trigger guilt, anger, defensiveness, fear. The goal is not truth. The goal is reaction. Silence denies reward. No reward, no repetition. This is why emotionally intelligent people rarely engage in heated exchanges. They don't argue facts, they observe patterns. Patterns reveal intention. Another powerful aspect of silence is decision delay. Manipulation thrives on speed. Decide now, respond now, explain now. Silence buys time. Time restores logic. Time cools emotion. Time exposes inconsistency. Many manipulative offers collapse when not answered immediately. Silence is not indecision, it is evaluation. Another psychological trap is over-justification. Manipulators push you to explain because explanations reveal weak points. The more you explain, the more angles they gain. Silence closes angles. It keeps your internal reasoning private. Privacy is protection. Another important realization: silence prevents emotional entanglement. When you speak less, you give fewer hooks. Hooks are words, tone, and timing that others can latch onto. No hooks, no leverage. This is why quiet people are difficult to manipulate. They don't provide material. Another subtle but critical benefit: silence exposes manipulators. When manipulation fails, behavior escalates. Tone changes, pressure increases, contradictions appear. This escalation reveals intent clearly. If you were speaking constantly, you would miss it. Silence lets behavior surface. Another key truth: you don't need to confront manipulation to defeat it. Confrontation creates drama. Drama creates distraction. Silence creates distance. Distance creates safety. Manipulators lose power when access is reduced. Silence is a form of access control. Another important realization: silence protects your reputation. Reactive speech is often misquoted, misinterpreted, or used against you. Silence leaves no evidence. This is why powerful people rarely speak impulsively. They understand that words once released cannot be retrieved. Another psychological protection offered by silence is emotional sovereignty. You decide when and how to engage emotionally. No one pulls reactions out of you. This sovereignty is deeply empowering. The most important realization of this part is this: manipulation only works when you give it access to your emotions. Silence closes that access. It keeps you centered. It keeps you clear. It keeps you in control. When to speak, using words as precision tools. Quiet power is not silence for the sake of silence. It is selective expression. Knowing when to speak is just as important as knowing when not to. Most people speak to release emotion. Powerful people speak to create impact. The difference is intention. Words are tools, and tools are only effective when used deliberately. Speaking at the wrong time weakens your position. Speaking at the right time reshapes the entire dynamic. The first rule of precision speech is this: speak when your words can change direction, not when they only release tension. If speaking does not alter outcome, clarify boundaries, or establish truth, it is often unnecessary. Emotion wants release, power wants results. Another critical rule: speak after observation, not before it. Observation gives context. Context gives accuracy. Accuracy gives authority. When you speak without context, you guess. When you speak with context, you decide. Decision carries weight. This is why quiet individuals often speak later in conversations. They let others reveal positions. They let contradictions surface. They let emotions settle. And then they speak. Their words land harder because they are informed. Another important principle: use fewer words but stronger structure. Precision speech is concise. Long explanations dilute authority. Short, clear statements establish it. Compare, "I just feel like maybe we could consider another option if that's okay," versus "this doesn't work for me." The second is not rude, it is grounded. Grounded speech ends negotiation. Another powerful use of speech is boundary definition. Silence observes, words define. When boundaries must be set, clarity matters more than warmth. Warmth invites debate, clarity ends it. This is why emotionally intelligent people don't soften boundaries excessively. They state them calmly and allow behavior to adjust. Another moment when speech matters is correction. Not every misunderstanding needs correction, but patterns do. When silence no longer serves clarity, speech becomes necessary. Correction should be calm, brief, factual. No emotion, no accusation, no explanation. Emotion escalates, facts stabilize. Another critical use of speech is alignment signaling. Sometimes people need to know where you stand, not through justification but through declaration. This builds trust. Trust does not require frequency, it requires consistency. When your words consistently align with your actions, people stop questioning you. Another key principle: never speak to fill silence. Speak to shape meaning. Silence creates tension. Speech resolves it. But resolution should be intentional, not impulsive. Another important realization: powerful speech often comes after long silence. Because silence builds anticipation. Anticipation increases attention, and attention amplifies impact. This is why leaders pause before speaking, why judges deliberate, why negotiators wait. They understand that timing multiplies meaning. Another truth most people miss: you don't need to win every conversation. You only need to protect position. Speaking less preserves position. Speaking precisely strengthens it. Over time, people learn something important about you. When you speak, it matters. This reputation alone creates quiet authority. The most important realization of this part is this: silence is your default. Speech is your instrument. Use it with care, and it will work for you, not against you. How quiet power changes how people treat you. People do not change their behavior because you ask them to. They change because the dynamic changed. Quiet power does not demand respect. It creates conditions where respect becomes natural. When you speak less and observe more, people begin to feel a shift, even if they cannot explain it. Your reactions slow down. Your words become selective. Your presence feels contained, and containment changes perception. The first thing people notice is uncertainty. They no longer know what you think immediately, how you will react, how much access they have. This uncertainty increases attention. People become more careful with words, more mindful of tone, more respectful of timing. Not because you intimidated them, but because you are no longer predictable. Predictability invites casual treatment. Unpredictability invites consideration. Another important change: people stop interrupting you. Why? Because interruption works only when someone keeps talking. When you speak selectively, others wait. Waiting creates hierarchy. The person others wait for holds higher perceived status. Another shift happens in conflicts. When you remain calm and quiet, emotional escalation fails. Others run out of fuel. They either lower intensity. explain themselves, or withdraw. All three outcomes favor you. Quiet power stabilizes situations without force. Another effect is reversal of effort. Before, you may have been the one explaining, clarifying, adjusting. After quiet power develops, others begin doing that work. They seek your response. They ask for your opinion. They wait for your signal. The dynamic flips, not because you demanded it, but because your restraint required it. Another subtle but powerful change. People start attributing depth to you. Even simple comments carry more weight. Why? Because scarcity increases value. When words are rare, they are treated as important. Another important realization. Quiet power filters people. Those who require constant reaction drift away. Those who respect boundaries move closer. This refinement improves the quality of your interactions. Less noise, more clarity, more alignment. Another effect is internal. You feel less drained because you are no longer managing everyone's emotions, every misunderstanding, every provocation. Energy returns, and energy changes posture, tone, and presence. People sense this immediately. Calm energy feels strong, scattered energy feels weak. Another psychological effect. People project authority onto calm individuals. This is automatic. The brain associates calm with competence, competence with leadership, leadership with respect. You don't need a title. Your behavior assigns one. Another key shift. You stop being pulled into unnecessary conversations. People become selective around you because they sense boundaries. Boundaries reduce entitlement. Entitlement reduction restores respect. Another truth. Quiet power makes people self-regulate. They adjust behavior before you say anything. This is the highest form of influence. Influence without instruction. Respect without enforcement. The most important realization of this part is this. People don't treat you differently because you changed who you are. They treat you differently because you changed how much of yourself they can access. Quiet power is not dominance, it is definition. And definition reshapes behavior, becoming the calmest presence in any room. At the highest level of human interaction, power is not loud. It does not compete. It does not interrupt. It does not rush to be seen. True power is calm. When you learn to speak less and observe more, you stop trying to control outcomes. And that is when control quietly returns to you. The calmest person in the room is almost always the most grounded. They are not scanning for approval. They are not defending identity. They are not reacting to noise. They are present. Presence is the final form of power, because presence cannot be faked. It is felt. When you are calm, others regulate themselves around you. They lower their voice. They choose words carefully. They slow their behavior. Not because you ask them to, but because calm sets the emotional temperature. This is why leaders are not frantic, why judges are composed, why negotiators pause. They understand that urgency belongs to those who lack control. Calm belongs to those who have it. Another important realization. You no longer need to win conversations. You only need to remain centered. Winning arguments creates resistance. Remaining centered creates influence. Influence lasts longer than victory. When you stop filling silence, silence starts working for you. It gives you space to think, space to choose, space to disengage when needed. Disengagement is not weakness, it is self-respect. Another final shift happens here. You stop measuring yourself through others' reactions. Approval loses importance, disapproval loses power, because your reference point has moved inward. Internally referenced people are unshakable. They don't need to announce strength, they embody it. This is why quiet power feels intimidating to insecure people. Not because it attacks, but because it does not respond. Non-response removes leverage. Another truth. You don't need to be understood by everyone. You only need to be clear with yourself. Clarity eliminates over-explaining. Clarity eliminates emotional leakage. Clarity eliminates unnecessary speech. And clarity sharpens presence. Over time, people associate you with calm decision-making, measured responses, intentional words. This reputation precedes you. You don't need to assert authority. It is assumed. This is the final lesson of quiet power. The less you react, the more control you gain. The less you explain, the more your words matter. The less you speak, the more people listen. Quiet power is not silence forever. It is silence by default, speech by choice. And once you master that balance, you become something rare. The calmest presence in any room. And calm presence is always respected.